Hello there, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is November the 6th. We are a little bit past the starting time scheduled for this live stream. I apologize. Some technical difficulties here, but I'm glad to be here with you. And let's get this started. I see Donna. Donna, how you doing? Hello, Luciano. Hello, Donna. I hope you are having a blast, Donna. And last time we spoke here in our live stream, you were in the south of the country, right? In a tiny town. Tell us how things are going. Okay. Also, let me see if we have any topics of interest shared up front. And by the way, folks, before we get too deep into our live stream, just to share that we will need to change our live stream format slightly. We got in touch with a decision from the Brazilian Bar Association. It was actually the Brazilian State Bar Association limiting how much we can discuss about legal topics in a public setting. Okay, so the decision goes like this: like it wasn't a live stream; it was like a live event, and there was a group of attorneys who were discussing legal topics, and during those legal topics, the attorneys, they were actually answering questions like specific to the participants, right? And there was even like a type of pro bono component to it, meaning that most people participating in the event, they could not afford hiring an attorney, right? So the attorneys participating in this event, they said, all right, this is more like a pro bono thing, and they were discussing pretty much everything that was brought to the event, like in terms of questions, in terms of legal topics. And then there was a decision, right? Like I don't recall the specifics on how the Bar Association got, news of the event, maybe because it was something recurring. But the São Paulo Bar Association, they decided that they could no longer address like legal topics, at least on an individual basis, right? Like, I mean, they could, for instance, for that particular population, they could address like topics in general. Let's say Social Security, right? Like this is something really important for like the lower social classes in Brazil because they rely heavily on Social Security. So the Brazilian Bar Association told the attorneys, listen, by all means, like you guys can instruct, you can tell the public exactly how Social Security works. You can also tell the public, like about different approaches on how to maximize Social Security. But during those events, you cannot answer specific questions that are going to be related to specific cases. Okay, so that's the bottom line. So from now on, what I'm going to do, and again, we're going to be testing this format and see how it works. Let's say if someone has a very specific question, like, my situation is ABC, like what should I do, right? I cannot tell you what you should do, right? Based on this decision that was brought to our attention, we are not allowed to comment on individual cases, but we are allowed to discuss things in general, right? Like, so if someone has a question about, a specific document for the digital nomad visa application, I'm not going to be able to answer what the person should do specifically to that document, but I can tell in general, like probably the principles that are being observed by the Brazilian immigration in terms of how the Brazilian immigration is going to review documents, right? It's more or less like, trying to keep like a more general conversation about legal topics than actually addressing things on an individual scale, if that makes sense. All right, I see Bill here. Oi, Luciano, hoping you're feeling well today. Yes, Bill, yes. Like I've been taking, better care of my health. And it looks like it was just like a matter of high cholesterol. So my bad cholesterol was really, really high. And my good cholesterol was really, really low. So I'm kind of changing my diet. Of course, like instead of, taking a cup of, fish oil pills. Now I'm taking more pills, and I'm also doing like some, heart-related tests. But the blood work indicated that it wasn't that bad. I don't know. Maybe it was, like a combination of, a diet that could be improved, and a peak of, work-related stress, right? Like, I mean, it's harder to avoid when you work with, when you work with law and when you work with, human lives, right? Like, I mean, we are helping people achieve their dreams. There is a lot of anxiety, right? Like, I mean, from our clients. And sometimes, like, I mean, it's very difficult for us to separate our personal lives from our clients' personal lives. So I think it was more like of a combination. I was kind of concerned, right? I don't really have like, a fear of something happening, but I'm concerned because, of course, there are other people relying on me, like there is a firm, or there are clients. I'm very happy to say that nowadays we do have like a reasonable sized team. So even if something happens to me and I'm out like for a couple of weeks, things at the firm, they are just going to continue to work as it should. So that brings some comfort. But I really appreciate, Bill. I'm feeling better. I'm taking better care of better care of my health, and hopefully I'm not going to be missing more live streams. Donna says, have a hiccup with my morning appointment with the federal police. All right, Donna. Yes, let's see what happened, but I believe I can fix this afternoon. Yes, federal police, it depends. Like, again, not commenting on your specific situation. Sometimes, it's just a matter of a few visits, right? Like, I mean, they like... this is very particular to the Brazilian culture. Sometimes, those folks who are working in a federal police department, they don't make much money, Donna. Like, they make a tiny fraction of what you guys, as foreign citizens, make in terms of income. And sometimes, that's all they have, like, is an opportunity to show some authority. And they also try to do things by the books. Sometimes they don't have a correct interpretation of requirements. But my recommendation for you, Donna, is to just keep your cool, and you're going to be good, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I know, I think, right? I cannot comment again on the specifics, but I think you did achieve your goal as a visa holder. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Okay, yes, Donna, all that good food will do that. Yes, Donna, you are absolutely right, right? Like, I mean, I was always a kind of a meat lover guy, like churrasco. Like, I'm Brazilian, I love churrasco, churrascaria, fogo de chão, Brazilian barbecue, right? So, we do barbecues like, we were doing, right? Like barbecues, believe it or not, sometimes, 2 to 3 times a week. And I guess, I'm going to need to change that, less barbecue, more chicken and fish. And that's life, right? Like, I mean, I am well into my 50s, so that's just part of life. So you are absolutely right, Donna. I think, all that good food is probably the main component of what happened. All right, Bill, good to know. Wishing you the best. Camila Saunier, so good to see you over here, Camila. Happy birthday to you, Camila. Happy birthday. All right, so what else we have here in the news? All right, not sure if I should be asking or not, but I will, okay, just because it's something big It's something big, like for you guys. And I'm just going to ask you guys to be, gentle, all right? If it's not your a cup of tea, you can just observe or, maybe sharing in a way that's not going to be offensive. But I want to ask you, what do you guys think about today's election results? Particularly Donna, I know that Bill is also in the U.S. Matthew Davis, good day, Luciano. Welcome, Matthew. Good to see you over here. I'm not sure if Matthew is also in the U.S. So I wanted to ask you guys from the U.S., what do you think about President Donald Trump's, victory now as the new president, right? Like, I mean, what do you guys think? Again, if it was not your choice, try to be nice to the others who chose President Donald Trump. I just wanted to ask your perspective, like to share from the Brazilian perspective. Not surprisingly, right? Like, I mean, President Trump and the U.S. election, it was like front page. It was front page true foul media in Brazil, right? So, like yesterday, a major portal, a major news portal is going to be UOL, right? So in the United States, 20, 30 years ago, there was AOL. And in Brazil, still today, we have UOL, which is like the portal for Folha de São Paulo, most probably the largest newspaper in Brazil. And that's the only thing you see, right? Like, I mean, you see like 5, 6 different, topics related to the election in the U.S. And then after, right, like you scroll down a lot, then you're going to see other news, like something pretty big. So not only to the United States, but I guess to the world, right? Like, and to Brazil as well. President Lula, went to Twitter and congratulated President Donald Trump on his victory. And he was very gracious, like saying, like he was wishing President Donald Trump, success in his mandate. I think he was very gracious, right? Like you probably know, the current federal administration is like a left-oriented federal administration. There was a lot of, aggravation. There was a lot of bad blood between the federal administration, the extremely aligned Supreme Court in Brazil, right? Like the Supreme Court is super aligned with President Lula. So there was bad blood between the Supreme Court and Elon Musk. Like, they kind of, took down the X in Brazil. They were like chasing money, and they actually took a lot of money from, Elon Musk's businesses in Brazil to pay for fines because Elon Musk was refusing to take down many accounts that by the Supreme Court of Brazil understanding they shouldn't be online, all right? But yes, I want to hear from you guys. Donna is complimenting here. The gentleman was nice. I smiled and said, thank you. I will be back in a bit. So good, Donna. I'm really happy that you're having a good experience. Camila Sonier, yes. Spotting, yes. Camila Sonier, happy birthday to you again. Donna, I think she she just have emojis, all right? Just emojis like surprise, surprise. These are, Donna's emojis here. Matthew Davis from Canada, but U.S. politics always has a big impact on us. Yes, Matthew, it's so interesting, right? Like, because Canada, of course, it's like completely separate country, but at the same time, like if you're driving into Canada, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you don't need a passport, but you also have the same country code for the phone system. So there are so many similarities, right, Matthew? I think there is a very close connection between Canada. Like whenever I am arriving in the United States, I see U.S. citizens, Canadian citizens, right? So they even have I think a similar line for Canadians. Yes, I guess it does impact Canada a lot. I see Mark Burgard. Hi, Luciano. I'm very happy this had been decided without riots, and hopefully peace will prevail in the world now. Yeah, so nice words, Mark. Yeah, I hear you, and I agree. It has been very peaceful. I saw news on New York Times, and other media. Most of them they were gracious, right? Like I mean, they said, like congratulations. It was a clear victory. So yeah, that's a good take on the results. Bill says best thing to happen, right? How right on the right track. Thank you for chiming in, Bill. Matthew Davis, being from Canada, I'm happy for the Trump win. Donna, wanting to see if everyone behaves following the election. It hasn't sunk in yet. That's true, Donna. Sometimes it does take, some time for people to process. But, like if you allow me, right? Like, I mean, my take on this is that, my biggest concern for the U.S., and there's so many things that are important to our society. But in my heart, right? Like in my heart, which is part of the U.S., right? Like I mean, I've been building my professional career in the United States as well. Many of you probably know that I am licensed as an attorney in the United States, in addition, of course, to Brazil, which is like my main professional license. But listen, like the United States has, I think, $35 trillion in debt. And for the first time in history, and correct me if I'm wrong, the United States was paying more in interest than expenditure, like in national defense and many other important things, right? So it's like interest is eating the U.S. legs, and this should stop, right? This should stop, and I think that was the main reason why President Donald Trump won. It was because he was very clearly, engaged in stopping all of those things that cannot continue anymore, right? On immigration, like I am an immigrant myself, I am a Brazilian, right? And but listen, the United States cannot accommodate the entire world, right? Like I am an immigration attorney, so I need to see both sides, right? Like I know that the U.S. Owes a lot to foreign citizens, Latinos, Mexicans. But listen, there is a limit to how much the country can do, and it was just out of control, like expenditure, immigration, and like this is what we could see from the last administration, and I think that's the reason why President Donald Trump won. Right. So, yes, the same thing. I'm going to say the same thing that President Lula said. I just wish the best to President Donald Trump. A lot of I really wish, that the U.S. is able to get its debt under control, and make sure that the immigration framework, which, by the way, it is just like amazing. Like there is nothing compared anywhere else in the world when you think about immigration framework. The U.S. immigration framework is like, I don't know, if you put, the U.S. framework, immigration framework and the Brazilian immigration framework, the U.S. is probably, 1,000 times more developed. I'm not saying better, I'm saying more developed. So like the laws, the structure, the personnel, the drivers, right? Like, there are so many. I think there are over 100 different types of visa in the United States. And this is one of the engines for development to the country, because, the United States is pretty good at attracting talent from worldwide, right? But when you have, like millions and millions and millions of people coming to the country outside of the immigration framework, guess what? All of those who are coming through the right tracks, they are unable to get their place, right? Like they are unable, like there are people waiting, like for a green card in the United States through the right process for over 20 years. Okay, so there are people who apply in their 20s and they needed to come to the US in their 40s because the system is just overwhelmed. And then you have someone who's just going to cross the border and take that spot. I don't think that's fair. I understand that there is a really a wild word out there, but I think it was time for someone to say enough is enough, and let's get this immigration system back on track. So there you go. That's my take on it. A lot of respect to the Democrats as well. I think that the Democrats, they have been pushing very important social agendas. And if it wasn't for the Democrats, right? Like, I mean, many of the social segments, they would be just forgotten, right? So that's it. Like, there is a beauty to the dual dual party system in the U.S., and that's so interesting because we don't have that in Brazil, right? Like, so maybe to highlight this comparison, like in Brazil, we never had two dominant, or maybe we had like rarely like two parties dominating the political scene, but in Brazil, we have all types of parties, all types of topics, and the U.S. is just like the Democrats and the Republicans. So very interesting for us Brazilians, right? And I see Camila is chiming in. Huge impact for Brazil as well. My parents were up all night in Brazil watching the count. All eyes in the U.S. There you go. Really nice sharing, Camila. You see. That's so interesting. Like Brazilians, as Brazilians, we really love the United States, and we follow, like the United States so closely. So this election, of course, like Brazil is a totally, separate reality. But at the same time, we Brazilians, we are still feeling like so close to the United States. Nice sharing, Camila. All right. Matthew Davis, everything you're saying is pretty much on point. Luciana, appreciate Matthew. Donna, but the deportation is going to cost so much more to happen. That's true, Donna. Annie, is it really important to buy a full ticket before applying for a tourist visa? WSBU, U.S. pays interest of $3 billion a day. That's unbelievable, right? Like, I mean, I think that's the bottom line, Bill. That's the bottom line. And Royland Walker. Royland, welcome to the chat. All right, so today, all eyes on the United States and the election. And the question here, would there be any kind of impact to the Brazilian immigration because of the results of the election? No, I don't think so. I don't think so, actually. Like just sharing is more like of a historical perspective. Until 2017, believe it or not, the Brazilian immigration was pretty close to foreign citizens from anywhere. Okay, so until 2017, like for you to stay in Brazil for the longer term, you didn't have many options. Okay, it was pretty much you would either marry a Brazilian national, or you would find a job. Like, I mean, you would work for a company who would then sponsor you to stay in Brazil. Of course, there is also asylum, like there are different visas for people seeking asylum and refugees. But Brazil was pretty close, like to an extent that most people would not believe if you look at the past from today's eyes, right? And then it was in between 2017 and 18 that the prior administration, right, like President Bolsonaro, who was pretty aligned with President Trump, meaning, both presidents from the right. But President Bolsonaro, he did a really, really a good job in terms of getting new visas. Okay, so all the new visas, right, like many of you who are in this live stream as we speak, you wouldn't be in Brazil if it wasn't for President Bolsonaro, right? Because President Bolsonaro, he created visas such as the retirement visa, the digital nomad visa, the real estate investment visa, the company development investment visa, and so many others. Okay, so there you go. And I think there was a little bit in part because of an inspiration brought from the United States. President Bolsonaro and his children, particularly his sons, right? I'm not sure if he has a daughter. I know he has, I think, like 3 sons. But they would go to the United States to learn things and come back to implement in Brazil, right? So I guess that they eventually saw the United States, the immigration framework, so many different routes for qualified resources to enter the United States, that they said, listen, we need something like this for Brazil. We need to make it easier for people to come to Brazil and live legally over here. And that's probably, why nowadays we have so many different routes for people to stay in Brazil for as long as they want. And again, I'm talking about less than 10 years ago. For you to stay in Brazil, it was almost like an impossible dream, right? Unless you would marry someone, which of course you wouldn't do that just for the sake of staying in Brazil. All right, Bill, looking out for us. Thank you, Bill. Bill says, please if you're enjoying our live stream today, please like the live stream. This is going to help us, have more followers. It's good for our business, and it does help other people who are in need of this content, like Brazil-related, immigration-related content, to find us. So I really appreciate if you could just click. It's just a click on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer. That's it. All right, Thomas Fleming. Oh, it has been a while, Thomas. Where have you been, Thomas? Hi, Oliveira. Loving your stream. All right, Thomas. Very happy to see you over here, and good to have your participation as well. Whenever you are present, make sure to chime in. This live stream is not going to be the same unless you guys participate and make it more interesting. All right, Paige. Oi, Luciano. Sorry I'm late. Are you feeling better this week? Thank you for coming, Paige. And yes, I'm feeling better. Thank you for asking. I'm taking better care of my health. And as Dana said, all of that good food, I think that was the reason for some issues I had. But I am, fixing up my diet, and hopefully no more issues. No more issues. That's what I hope. Okay, Thomas Fleming, you previously mentioned allocating 5% on top of the expected costs for the Golden Visa. Is this because we can't get the official exchange rate to reais, or just a buffer for unforeseen costs? Yes, Thomas, all of those reasons, right? So let's talk a little bit about the real estate purchase additional costs you're gonna have. Okay, so realtors usually it's gonna be a 6%, and the 6% is gonna be built into the property price, right? So if you find a property for 1 million reais, it means you're gonna pay the 1 million reais to the seller, and the seller is gonna pay the 6% to the realtors. At the end of the day, it's still your money, but what I'm trying to say is that you don't need to pay on top of the selling price. Okay. Now, we had a bunch of transactions, right? Because of the currency exchange, like people from the U.S., they are buying properties like crazy in Brazil, and you probably know, Thomas, like the exchange rate is very favorable to U.S. citizens buying property in Brazil. Or traveling, right, Bill? Like if you want to come to Brazil to spend a week, like go to the dentist, now is the time. Like your currency is pretty strong. Now is the time. Going back to Thomas. So Thomas, because we had so many transactions like this year, some of the transactions, they were right on the limit, like meaning the minimum required for the person to secure the visa. And in no case we had a decision from the immigration saying, well, you know what, like 6% over here, it was actually to the realtor, and therefore we're not going to grant you the real estate investment visa. So here we can tell you that, you know, the 6% that is built into the price is not going to be is not going to represent a problem for you. Okay, now when you're buying a property, you need to provision the closing costs. The closing costs, they are going to be usually something around 4%, 4% of the, you know, the purchase price, with some exceptions. Like in Rio de Janeiro, the only state in the country in which you know, like the municipalities, they are usually going to use a kind of a price list for the properties that has no connection to reality. Right, very much probably because of, you know, all like the, you know, the corruption history, you know, in the state government of Rio de Janeiro, which is, you know, unfortunately very telling of many things in Rio. You know, Rio is a beautiful state. I love Rio. That's where we have, you know, like our largest office. That's where we have, you know, our, you know, largest transactions. But in Rio de Janeiro, like, I mean, it's very common, like someone is buying a property for 1 million reais, and when you're going to pay the tax, the city of Rio de Janeiro says, well, in my opinion, this property is worth 1.5 million reais. And guess what? You're going to need to pay the tax over 1.5 million reais, right? So that's why usually in Rio de Janeiro, instead of the 4% for closing costs, we usually say 5%. But you never know exactly how much the closing costs are going to be until later during the transaction. All right, Thomas. So we spoke about 6% in terms of realtors already built into the price. Closing costs not built into the price. You're going to pay on top of the purchase price. Outside of the 5%, yes, there is always the, you know, like the exchange rate. You can never tell, you know, how much it's going to be. Usually, most of the time, like whenever you need to send the money to Brazil, we're going to tell you to send 5% on top. And this is usually more than enough. You know, sometimes you're going to put 5% more to be on the safe side, and then maybe the currency is going to move in a favorable way to you. And guess what? You're going to get back not only the 5%, sometimes even more than what you sent to Brazil. Right, but 5% is usually what we recommend for people sending money to Brazil to send on top of what they would have to send. Okay, whenever you're sending money to Brazil with our help, we work with a currency exchange bank. You always send in US dollars. There is no way for people to send the Brazilian reais from abroad. Some banks like Chase Bank, right? Like Chase Bank, they tell you, well, you want to send in Brazilian reais. But guess what? You're not actually sending Brazilian reais. They are just giving you a rate, and then they are sending your transaction to a partner currency exchange bank in Brazil, because Chase cannot send Brazilian reais. You're still sending US dollars, but what they do is to lock in a rate up front, and then when you send the money is going to arrive at a partner of Chase Bank in Brazil, and this partner bank is going to handle the currency exchange, okay? The rate you're going to get through Chase is not like the best one. Like if you work with local currency exchange banks in Brazil, usually you're going to get a better rate. And another concern we have with something like Chase sending the funds is that you don't have a control over the release time, right? Like once you send the money, Chase is sent to the partner, and they don't care about your closing. They don't care about your transaction. Once they see the paperwork that they need, they are going to release on the spot. They are not going to ask you if they can release or not. They are going to go ahead and release the money. Okay, so that's why usually whenever we are working with clients, if they're using Chase Bank, we're going to have an IBAN, from the seller in Brazil, but through the currency exchange bank that is a partner with our firm. So we have a way to tell the bank when to release the funds. And that's what we call like an emulated escrow, right? It's not a real escrow. There is no real escrow in Brazil. Sometimes people say, well, but I saw that Santander, like they say they have an escrow, right? Or the second variation of that information is like, well, I heard that registries in Brazil now they can do escrow. Yes, I'm not saying that nobody can do escrow in Brazil. What I'm saying is like 98% or 99% of the real estate transactions in Brazil have no escrow. Okay, so there is no escrow in a practical from a practical perspective in Brazil. And what we try to do is to emulate the escrow so the seller doesn't get your money way ahead of time. All right. I hope that was clarifying, Thomas. Mark is asking, Luciano, I was told by an American that was married, registered in Brazil in the U.S., but later got divorced in the U.S., but afterwards discovered he has also to register a new divorce in Brazil separately. Yes, Mark. So that's the so-called homologation, all right? Homologation. I'm going to write over here, right? If you divorce in the U.S. While being married to a Brazilian, there will be a need for a homologation of the divorce in Brazil, okay? And believe it or not, right, that's an interesting question. We don't get this one often here at the live stream. And Mark, believe it or not, like this homologation is handled by the second highest court in Brazil. And they pretty much review the entire divorce in the United States, right? Like they ask you for the entire paperwork for the case. So meaning, you know, like if there was a separate settlement agreement, right? Like at least in Texas, it's pretty common. If the parties agree to a specific settlement document, the settlement document is going to be added to the court decision. If there are custody and if there are spousal support, like child support, all of those things, they are going to need to be presented to the Brazilian STJ, which is the second highest court in Brazil. The Brazilian court is going to review the entire case right after. Of course, nothing is so easy in Brazil. You just don't present the records. You're going to need to get an apostille for the actually, first thing is going to be like certified court records, certified by the court itself. After you get the certified records, then you need to get an apostille on top of the certified records. After that, you're going to need to hire a sworn translation in Brazil, which is very expensive, especially if you have a lot of pages in your case file. And, so only after you do all of that, you can file a petition to the Brazilian STJ. It's not the Supreme, it's one level before the Supreme, right? Like the Supreme Court in Brazil, we call it STF, and the second highest court is STJ, right? The STJ was actually the original highest court, but then they created one that was even higher than STJ, and the STF, which is the one on top, is the Supreme. But the second highest court is the one who's going to, kind of review the legal decision in the U.S., and most of the time, basically just say, you know what, like I don't see any problem, and therefore I am homologating this divorce, and I'm allowing this divorce to have effects, to have legal effects in Brazil. Meaning then, yes, like, if you have like a Brazilian marriage certificate, this Brazilian marriage certificate is going to be updated to show the divorce as well. Same thing for the Brazilian party, right? Like in Brazil, whenever we marry, if we divorce, if we die, all of those things, they are added to your birth certificate, right? So my birth certificate, for instance, has my birth and it has my marriage, right? So if someone gets a copy of my birth certificate, they can tell that I am married, right? If one day I divorce, the divorce would be added to my birth certificate. So if someone gets my birth certificate at that point, they would see both the marriage and the divorce. When my time comes, to go to the next adventure, then there is going to be a death certificate, and the death is going to be added to my birth certificate. So at that point, my entire civil life is going to be described on my birth certificate. Very different from the U.S., and it's very interesting, particularly for those who are marrying a Brazilian national or buying property in Brazil, you're gonna see this type of reality, and it's surprising because the registry, like the cartórios in Brazil, they are gonna assume that it is the same thing in the United States, right? Like they never studied U.S. law, so whenever you're buying a property as a single person, aside of Rio de Janeiro, in every other state, they are gonna ask you for a birth certificate, and they are gonna ask you for a fresh birth certificate because they assume if you marry in the United States, the marriage is going to show up on your birth certificate. We know it's not the case, but here at the firm, we are always trying to make things as smooth and straightforward for our clients as possible. So instead of fighting the registry, instead of trying to educate the registry, guess what? We're just going to give what they ask, right? So if you're buying property, like in Sierra, if you're buying property, in São Paulo as a single person, guess what? We're just not tell, listen, you got to have, a fresh birth certificate. We don't even tell you why they are asking for it. We just tell you, listen, you need to provide the document. We provide the documents. The registry allows you to close. Then there is a second registry that's going to, get you a new title. We got to, make things move. Like we have no time to educate registries. Especially because they don't want to be educated, right? Like, if you tell like the registry officer, listen, that's not how it works in the U.S., he will probably get pissed, like, well, you don't think I know about things in the United States? And then he's going to give you a harder time to get what you need from the registry. So we don't do that, right? Like we just give what they want and we get this thing done, right? But I hope that helps, Mark, with the understanding of the need for homologation of a divorce in Brazil, and also about, the reality of the paperwork updates as well. Paige says, Brazil does have some really good food, hard to resist sometimes. I'm glad to hear you're feeling better. Thank you, Paige. Yes, I guess my problem is the Brazilian barbecue, super famous Brazilian barbecue, right? And that's something we really, have at home, and like I will need to scale down in red meat and just eat more fish and chicken as well. All right, we have Nidongmo Joseph. Welcome, Joseph. Joseph is asking, based on what you said about residing in Brazil, does it mean an individual can renew the digital nomad visa indefinitely, provided he keeps meeting the requirements and wants to remain in Brazil? So that's a good question, Joseph. Like when the digital nomad visa was created by President Bolsonaro, okay, the idea was that you would get 1 year of a digital nomad in Brazil, renewable for a second, right? So that's what you see in the regulation. Like if you read the original regulation, it says 1 year and then you can renew the digital nomad. And then the regulation says future additional regulation is going to address the renewal of the digital nomad visa, right? So it means, the Brazilian immigration was saying, listen, this is something new. Like I don't want to tell you if this thing is going to renew forever or not. I'm just creating the digital nomad visa so we can have this thing working. And once we see the impacts that this visa is going to have in Brazil, I'm going to decide if I allow it to be renewed, forever or not. That was the mindset, okay? And believe it or not, since then, there was no additional regulation addressing the renewal, okay? So what we have nowadays is basically a limbo. And what I can tell you is, like most of our clients who are applying, or I would say all of our clients who are applying for their second extension, meaning the third year of digital nomad in Brazil, they are getting the renewal, right? Now, if you ask me, is it guaranteed? I'm going to tell you, I don't think so. I don't think so because there are different interpretations to how long you can renew the digital nomad visa for, right? Ideally, the regulation that was expected by the first regulation would be created, and give peace of mind to foreign citizens to plan their future in Brazil. Okay, Joseph, I hope that was helpful. Jake FX. All right, Jake, good to see you over here. Just got my digital nomad visa. Was all wrapped up in no time, super quick, compared to how I have heard from others, especially going the busy season. Exciting times ahead. Thank you for your infos. Congratulations, Jake. I'm very happy to hear that. And I think, it really depends. It really depends on who's applying, your specifics. Of course, there is also a matter, of randomness. Who's going to be working on your digital nomad visa if you're applying at a consulate, like if you get an officer who's going to be accommodating or not. If you are applying in Brazil, right, then most probably than not, you do need a professional because then you're going to apply through an immigration system. But Jake, good for you. Congratulations on securing the digital nomad visa, and I wish you a blast in Brazil. Andrew McDaniel. Hi, Luciano. Is it possible to send larger amounts to Brazil without having a defined reason? For example, you live there and you want to have your money there. Shouldn't that be reason enough? Andrew, that's not exactly how it works. I follow your thinking. And, like moving to Brazil, it could be a reason for sending money to Brazil, right? So let's say if you secure a permanent residency because of marriage, or if you secure permanent residency because of, a property that you bought, in my understanding, this alone is going to be a very good reason for you to send a lot of money to Brazil. And we call it this transaction, when you send money from yourself from you to yourself in Brazil, is going to be called availability, all right? Like traditional banks, such as Bradesco, Banco do Brasil, and others, they don't like that because it does trigger additional scrutiny from a compliance perspective. But currency exchange specializing banks, they are usually fine with it. But they are going to ask for a ton of paperwork, right? Like they want to see your tax returns in the U.S., they want to see from where the money is coming from. So they're going to ask you for, bank statements. They could ask you easily for a full year of bank statements. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to ask you for a ton of documents. They are going to make sure that you are residing legally in Brazil, because otherwise, again, there is no real reason for you to be moving money to Brazil, right? So that's the bottom line, Andrew. They are going to look at it, and this transaction got to make sense from a common sense perspective, and you will need like a lot of documents to support the reasoning that you are providing to the bank, right? Like again, like from the United States, you're sending by Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, whatever bank you use, Capital One. You just get a wire transfer done. You can send $1 million, no explanations needed, right? Like sometimes you just need to go to the branch so they make sure it is you who's trying to send it this chunk of money. But in Brazil, it's exactly the opposite. Like they are gonna get crazy in terms of compliance before releasing your money in Brazil. Okay, and that's a mandate by the Brazilian Central Bank, right? Like so, banks. It's not their choice to spend a ton of time and energy reviewing money remittances. This is a mandate from the Brazilian Central Bank. And as far as I remember, if you don't document a money remittance enough, a bank could be fined for, if I'm not wrong, I think the fines start at 250,000 reais, which is almost like 50,000 US dollars, right? And this is where the fine starts. So the Brazilian Central Bank, they go, overboard in terms of vetting monies coming into the country. It doesn't make much sense from the, the government perspective, right? Like, if you look at other countries like China, China has a limit per person of 50,000 US dollars. You cannot send the money abroad in addition to $50,000. There are exceptions, and they always find a way to send the money abroad. But the mentality here is that, you should make it easy for money to come into the country and ideally difficult for the money leave the country, but not Brazil, right? This is one of the things difficult to explain. It's more related to, historical reasons, but Brazil makes very, very hard for people to send the money to Brazil. Now, on the other side, if you're buying a property, the good thing is the purchase of the property is going to be the explanation for why you're sending the money. And then usually they're going to focus more on the receiving party than the sending party, right? So they're going to do a very heavy due diligence on whoever is going to get your money, meaning the seller of the property, and a much lighter compliance check on you as the sender. All right, Jake. All right, so we are about to finish up our live stream, but we have our live stream for next Sunday. It's already up, okay? And I will do my best to attend. And I'm keeping there just because I'm hopeful I'm gonna attend. Sometimes, on Saturday, I'm resting, and then on Sunday, maybe because I'm slowing down and then I'm not feeling so well. But I'm keeping there for a reason. I'm keeping there because I do want to participate, all right? So if you just go to our live stream schedule, you're going to see that there is a Sunday session. You just click on notify me so you can be, alerted when the live stream is starting. I want to say thank you for the participation today. You guys were great. I appreciate how gracious all of you were regarding the election. I know it was probably the choice of slightly more than half, so the other half, it wasn't, the preferred choice. But you guys were very gracious, and I'm very happy for you guys, and really wishing, a really bright future for those friends from the United States. So see you again on Sunday, and you guys have a blessed rest of your day.